So what if I told you this video of a wild hippo in the city wasn't actually filmed in Africa, but South America? Yep, there are hippos in Colombia. And not just one, not two, but currently as many as 160, all roaming freely around the Magdalena River, all because of this man right here. And you thought invasive Burmese pythons were scary. Oh boy, you've seen nothing yet. So let's cue the intro.
Alien hippos are invading Colombia. They're here because of notorious narco-trafficker Pablo Escobar.
Unchecked, scientists in the Colombian jungle say the so-called cocaine hippos could multiply to 1,000.
No predators and ample food and water. But they're getting too close to people. It's not uncommon to spot a 3,000-pound hippo walking around town.
Yep, so this is going to be one pretty crazy video involving everything from cocaine to how hippos were once classified as people in a court case. Oh, and don't even get me started on the hippo poop apocalypse. And I couldn't even make that up if I wanted to. Yeah, this video gets pretty bonkers pretty quickly, so let's start from the beginning. So if you didn't know, there are two different species of hippo. You have the adorable pygmy hippo, which is the one you typically see dancing in these Disney movies and having this cute little meme creature around it. And then you have the river hippo, which is known for attacking lions and killing crocodiles, and also assassinating about 500 people each and every year. While the river hippo obviously isn't evil, it is one of the most territorial creatures on the planet, and of course that is what Pablo Escobar decided to buy as a pet, while he was working on starting off his private zoo, which he created for his daughters to enjoy. Oh yeah, did I say one hippo? Actually, he bought four, 3 females and 1 male, fully grown, and while it's not entirely known where he got the hippos from, he would have likely been able to ship the hippos to Colombia pretty easily using a little thing called drug money. Yep, if you didn't know, Pablo Escobar was basically the richest drug dealer on the planet, being worth billions of dollars. So basically he could buy any animal he wants. And he didn't just buy hippos, he also bought giraffes, zebras, elephants, kangaroos, and a few other creatures as well. Unfortunately, his dreams of a private zoo would come to an end in 1993, where the Colombian government was able to quote-unquote bin Laden Pablo Escobar, which in more serious terms basically means the Colombian government broke into Pablo Escobar's house and executed him for his many crimes. And following his assassination, the Colombian government ended up taking all of Pablo Escobar's money and most of his animals, but they left 4 behind, that being those hippos. This is because the hippos were actually considered to be the most dangerous and hardest animals to recapture after Pablo Escobar's death, which says a lot considering the fact that they had to literally recapture an elephant. But the hippos were still considered more dangerous, and the Colombian government did not want to spend its money and time trying to track down and capture these dangerous hippos. So eventually they were just left to live on the estate on their own, being assumed that they would eventually die off. Of course though, the Colombian government was very wrong, as now there's over 160 hippos roaming freely throughout Colombia. So how did 4 hippos become 160 in only the span of 30 years? Well, there's a couple of factors, starting off with the fact that hippos, well, let's just say they love to passionately fornicate. Originally, there was only 3 females and 1 male, but very similar to hogs, it only really takes 1 male and 1 female to start a population. And that male hippo was Pepe. And apparently Pepe really liked to breed. But Pepe's going to become very important later. What matters is that the hippo population pretty much quadrupled from 4 to 16 in only the span of 14 years. But that number would start to increase exponentially due to the fact that hippos don't exactly have any predators in Colombia. And while creatures like the Orinoco crocodile and the jaguar likely would be able to prey on juvenile hippos, those animals simply don't live near Medellin, where the hippos were initially released, only about an hour from the city in the countryside. With this area just so happening to give the hippos not just an area with no predators, but also an area with even more diversity in food sources and water sources than their actual native range in Africa. This allowed for the hippo population to explode extremely quickly. and now there's about 160 to 170 individuals, all in the Medellin countryside of Colombia. Normally in their native habitat, it would take the hippo 7 to 13 years in order to sexually mature, but due to all the ample resources and lack of predators in Colombia, it only takes these hippos about 3 to 4 years in order to become sexually mature and ready to breed. And hippos are also capable of having one calf every year for up to 35 years straight. Yeah, so for a large mammal, these hippos reproduce incredibly fast. And in Colombia, with ample resources, they're basically able to grow really fast too. And also, unlike other mammals, these hippos don't exactly have a problem with, let's just say all these hippos are related to Pepe in some way. Let's just leave it at that. So basically, in other words, the ecosystem is screwed. As just like every other new introduced animal to an ecosystem, the hippos have an impact, a pretty large one in fact. The first one being that hippos are known for reshaping river systems, mainly due to their large size and the fact that they love to dig. They will literally reshape rivers and restructure, making it harder for other animals that have been living in these aquatic ecosystems for centuries to adapt. These hippos are also highly aggressive towards both people and other animals and will likely push a lot of the large megafauna out of the area, including but not limited to the tapir, puma, most of the different deer species in the area, and of course a lot of the crocodilian species, such as the spectacled caiman, and if these hippos are to expand their range, the American crocodile, which lives right downriver as well. And we haven't even talked about the worst thing about these hippos yet. Their turds. Hippos are known for producing an incredibly large amount of waste, which makes sense since they eat a lot, but with a large amount of waste being produced by an animal that loves to reproduce a lot, this leads to a lot of the rivers getting polluted with the hippos, to put it lightly, nutrient-rich turds. And these nutrient-rich turds basically end up polluting up the rivers, not just causing them to smell like fecal matter, but these turds also act as the perfect fertilizer for a lot of different algae species, leading to the perfect algae bloom. And algae blooms are known for not just taking oxygen out of the water and releasing toxic chemicals, but also blocking out sunlight for many other aquatic plants and protists, which eventually contributes to the waters becoming hypoxic and a lot of the fish suffocating to death. This increasingly common event has led to a massive decline in fish populations in the Magdalena River and its surrounding lakes, which is hugely problematic, as many of the villages along the Magdalena River are fishing villages and count on the river as a food source and also for the livelihoods of hundreds if not thousands of people. And now, thanks to those hippos, a lot of the people along the Magdalena River are suffering because of the massive fish shortage. And also, I forgot to mention, these hippos also attack fishing boats as well, essentially contributing to a miniature hippopocalypse in these small towns. So what does the Colombian government decide to do about it? Of course, it decides to get some help from the US, and with the United States help and the combined might of the Colombian military, it was decided that the hippos would have the same fate as Pablo Escobar and that the hippos must be culled. And their first target was of course Pepe. Pepe, being considered the oldest and one of the most aggressive of the local male hippos, was unfortunately the first one killed, which is ironic considering the fact that Pepe was considered to be Pablo Escobar's favorite, only to suffer the same exact fate. But you see, the Colombian government made a huge mistake, that being that they decided to post the picture of Pepe for the world to see. And this caused a lot of outrage. While I personally believe that was probably for the best that Pepe was humanely euthanized, as I believe these hippos simply gotta go as they're too damaging to the ecosystem and that there is simply no more practical solutions besides killing them. But a lot of people heavily disagreed, and this led to an animal rights group straight up suing the United States government for helping in the Colombian government's cause. So if you've ever seen the Bee movie, you know how the bees sue humanity and are like considered people from then on? That's basically what happened with these Colombian hippos, as the hippos were granted personhood, therefore meaning that the hippos could no longer be culled. Yes, the United States government granted Colombian hippos personhood. In other words, the US court system is very confusing. By the way, if you enjoy crazy animal stories like this, then please feel free to like and subscribe, as I got tons more of them coming straight at you. And while it's not like these hippos have civil rights now, what they do have is the ability to essentially be immune from all sorts of euthanization. So, what does the Colombian government decide to do next? Of course, they decide to make the same mistake and get the United States help again. This time though, they decided to try to sterilize all the hippos, which is incredibly hard to do to a 1.5 ton animal that has internal sex organs. So what plan did the US initially come up with? Of course, that was trapping each and every one of these hippos one by one and trying to surgically remove their balls. Of course, this is incredibly hard to do to an animal as large and aggressive as the hippo, so what they decided to do was essentially trap the hippos by manipulating them to go inside of a pen, though this didn't have that much success as they were only able to do it successfully to one hippo every year for a couple years straight, and it was costing the US hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they decided to go with a different plan. That being to create a substance that could sterilize the hippos chemically, because apparently you could sterilize an animal with personhood, but you can't kill them for some reason. Like, I love hippos, don't get me wrong, they're an incredibly cool, large, prehistoric looking mammal, but they belong in their native range in Africa, and I don't see why invasive hippos should get special treatment over other invasive species such as invasive reptiles or even invasive cats. Also, in case if you're wondering why these hippos can't simply just be captured and shipped back to Africa, the problem is mostly disease. Since these hippos have grown up in a whole new environment, there's a good chance that they've been exposed to a lot of the different diseases that are native to South America but aren't native to Africa. So by reintroducing those hippos back to Africa, there's a good chance they could spread disease and possibly wipe out the native population. So really, there aren't that many solutions that could be done to fix this giant 1.5 ton mammalian invader problem. And while chemical sterilization has started and been working to some extent, it still hasn't been enough to slow down the hippo population significantly, as it is still estimated that if these hippos continue to breed at the rate they're at, their numbers could explode from 160 to 1,600 individuals in only 25 years, which is pretty scary to say the least. Even still, with this apocalyptic problem at hand, a lot of the locals actually support keeping the hippos around and are against sterilization programs. This is for one simple reason: ecotourism. As while the hippo problem has significantly decreased the amount of fish in the Magdalena River, they've also increased the amount of people wanting to go to the Magdalena River, specifically to see these hippos. If you didn't know, after Pablo Escobar was shot and killed, his estate, including his private zoo, was actually turned into a theme park. Yep, I know this is some crazy Jurassic Park level stuff right here. So after Pablo Escobar's theme park was created, they decided to take out the drug theme and replace it with the hippo theme, as at the time there was about 16 hippos, all living in the lake around Pablo Escobar's estate. But eventually those hippos of course expanded beyond Escobar's estate and into the Magdalena River and its surrounding lakes. So now there's a massive hippo themed theme park and a bunch of poor villages surrounding the theme park. So what do these villages decide to do? They decide to learn how to adapt with the new problem of the hippos and turn them into their benefit. The locals have done this by literally doing boat tours where they take tourists out to see the wild hippos out in the South American jungle. And while this has been good for the locals as it's allowed them to profit massively over ecotourism, it has still came at the cost of course, their food supply, leaving to a very weird situation where they have to decide what they value more, the money that comes in from ecotourism or the food that comes in from the river. And surprisingly, a lot of the locals are very pro-hippo, with some of the younger generations having even grown up around the hippos and considering it to be a part of their culture. Still, many of the locals are concerned about the hippo population expanding as they're now going into cities, and even starting herds around local buildings, such as this preschool. Yep, there are literally hippos around preschoolers, and it's only a matter of time before a fatal attack happens. While attacks have been reported in Colombia, none of them have been fatal yet. These hippos are also a driving hazard, as yes, people have literally ran into these hippos, and it's only a matter of time before a fatal car accident occurs because of a hippopotamus. Man, that is such a weird sentence to say out loud. But on a more serious note, keep in mind if a car crash with a deer could be fatal, then imagine what a car crash with a hippopotamus can do. With these sterilization programs not working too well, the Colombian government has begun to have increasing fears that these hippos might even expand using the Magdalena River to travel into Venezuela and even the Amazon. Meaning that in 100 years' time, we might not just have hippos in Colombia, but possibly all of tropical South America. From Brazil all the way to Peru. So unfortunately, regardless of the benefits these hippos bring from ecotourism, something has to be done to stop the population from expanding further, as these hippos are are literally possibly going to take over the entire continent of South America if something isn't done soon and fast. And since these chemical sterilization programs so far are barely making a dent in the population, as there's really no stopping these hippos from breeding with each other, a more drastic measure has been proposed. That being that the Colombian government has decided to finally ask for help from someone other than the US and has asked for India and Mexico to take about 70 of the 160 to 170 hippos. And if anyone's wondering why we can't get a reliable number on these hippos, that's because they're reproducing at such a rapid rate that we can't even count them all. So yeah, this is literally the hippopocalypse. But thankfully, both India and Mexico have offered to help by taking in about half the hippo population into their own local sanctuaries and zoos. But there's still a problem. What about the other 90-something hippos? We can't just Thanos half the hippo population and not expect them to come back. Well, so far it seems like the Colombian government just hopes the United States will be able to chemically castrate all the hippos, allowing them to remain sterile in the environment and prevent the population from breeding further. While this hasn't been successful so far, hopefully by creating videos like this, we could continue to raise awareness about this problem so we could learn what we should really do with these hippos and how to protect the ecosystem from them. No animal is truly monstrous, hippos included, but the hippos do pose a threat to the native people and of course the native animals of the ecosystem, and I believe those things should come first, the same way it usually does for all other invasive species. And while I do think it is great that the local people could find a way to benefit from the hippos financially, these hippos still gotta go. Because it's only a matter of time before one of them attacks and kills a person. In their native range, the river hippo is known for killing up to 500 people each and every year, which is even more than that of the African lion, leopard, and African elephant combined. So yeah, these hippos are a huge and very fascinating threat. And sadly, we can't keep spending millions of dollars each and every year in order to help manage the hippo population. So I feel like the best I could do as a bystander is help spread awareness about this issue and hear your guys' opinions about it in the comments down below, because this is one pretty crazy and fascinating invasive species problem. And I am very curious to hear about how you guys all feel about this incredibly fascinating issue. So please, if you enjoy learning about all sorts of cool animals and all sorts of crazy places, then feel free to like and subscribe so you could hear more from me and all my wonderful mini documentaries.